Hello everyone, I'm going to do a tour of my 40-day challenge journal, but it's gonna be probably a little long. So what I'm gonna do is, I just got to the halfway point, day 20, so I will just film this in two parts. Really briefly, the tools I am using are Prismacolor markers. I do have some Copics, Copics, but I had these sets of brush tip Prismacolors, which I got on sale a while back, and I figured they're probably might be comparable to Prismacolors or to Copics, so I was really interested to see how they performed. The answer is very well, and the only difference I could really tell, other than the fact that these are not refillable and do not have replacement nibs, is if you were to do blending exercises on marker paper, you would see that the blending is a little bit better with the Copic markers. And I know it's Copic because I was looking it up today, and it's a Japanese brand, and they don't really do the sound ka unless it's like K-A, and it's spelled C-O. So whether it was C-O or K-O, it's gonna be ko. So it's Copic markers, but you just dang hear it all these different ways. And Copic, you hear it all the time. It gets stuck in your head. So anyway, I had gotten a set of these for I think about 40 or 35 back in the day. And for this exercise, I knew I was going to be traveling a lot, and I didn't want to take the super expensive markers out. So I got a couple more colors to extend the set because that was keeping me from using them. And I got some grays. I got neutral gray, French gray, and a few more colors just to fill in. And then recently I went back in and grabbed some of my old markers I hadn't been using that have the chisel tip, which do really well. They're just not quite as awesome as the brush tip, although they're pretty dang good for a chisel. Like, they're pretty soft. I made a color chart. There's the additional colors from the chisel tips and my new colors, which I freaking love. These two have come in so handy already. That's mint cream and green tea. It's just, I'll show you a picture in the journal that I utilized those right away. Anywho, the other thing I have is some go-to markers. The multiliner, I have a couple things to try, like the finito, and I've done some water tests in the back of the book, marker tests. Your standard stuff. I really enjoyed using this Zig pen a lot, although I got this like 1,010 years ago, so I can't be sure that this awesomeness is still the current way they're making it, so I would have to test that out. But right now, I love this pen. And I have a Tombow pen, which is not near me, that I hate. It's a brush pen with the little felt tip. I've always hated it. It frayed really fast. But my particular way that I was using it was for line work. So the brush tip markers that are colors I know are pretty popular, and maybe they don't fray anymore, and for coloring maybe it's a different experience, but for lining I hated it. This is my new favorite, the Tombow Fudenosuke. This is freaking amazing. And I do note the materials I used for most of the drawings so that you can see the difference in how they look and all that fun stuff. So getting started, I decided that not just doing a travel watercolor kind of deal, which was my first significant attempt to start doing art again this year and to make it a part of my life. That was really good, but I wasn't doing anything when I wasn't traveling, which was not good. I have grown a lot, even just with the cheap watercolor set I was using and the little sketchbooks, which I have in a different video, but I wanted to incorporate this into daily life. I really enjoyed some urban sketching that I saw in some videos of certain people, a very loose style, and I said, you know what, I need to just make myself sketch fast. And yeah, I just wanted to challenge myself to do things that I didn't necessarily like doing. Like drawing from life always felt so tedious, and then you have to break out the ruler, and I discovered that there's a way to draw realism and draw from life and not break out the ruler, and it's still fine, and you don't have to be perfect. And so that is what this sketchbook is about. So I did a cover page to kind of remind myself we're doing urban sketching, draw fast, draw often, forget about perfection, forget what you know about realism, capture the scene and the mood, and then focus on color and value. So mixed media, things like that. Day one, I was just in my house and I drew my desk. And I used watercolor techniques of like leaving white space to kind of trick the eye into feeling a lighter value. And if you look closely in those flowers, I did not have the right color, so I just did dots next to other dots of different colors. It's like an implied color tone. Forgetting the word, comparative color. I forget, but pointillism does this. I actually did a piece in school with pointillism, and that's the thing, like your eye will blend it together. You don't have to blend it yourself, and that's a lot of what the pointillists were focusing on, is how the eye will build the image. So I utilized that trick in here and some other places, and I think it worked quite well. I rather liked this piece. I have some mugs that I was using for my watercolors. I have my mug right here that I got in Scotland, a ceramic dish I was using for watercolors, just little touches. My brother got me this in Japan when I was in high school, and it's a chopstick rest, but I found it's great for brushes. And some Daniel Smith watercolors. Now, it was a struggle to do these because, again, realism and breaking that habit of avoiding it. This is just a cabinet I have in my place, and you know, I'm practicing with markers, and markers always frustrated me because they would be just too dark, so I'm utilizing different, I guess, approaches to how I'm using the markers and trying to push the boundaries of what I think I know about how markers should be used. Day 3, I did a whole bunch of watercolor studies of like this house thing I had in my head. So this took up a lot of my time, and so I gave myself a break and just did a quicker sketch of my cat Moose. And I've never done such a sketchy cat, and so part of my brain was just like, ah. But what I learned is the color and the values of like where you have your shadow and your brights is more important than a sketchy line to show like depth and curvature and things of that nature. So I really liked that lesson for that. Now, I couldn't get out to do actual urban sketching like on location all the time, so I'm allowing for doing it from photographs when I can't be out. So I picked this coffee shop scene and I tried to just break it down and start sketching and not sketch long. Day 5, I did some color studies because I know how much color can affect the mood and feel of a scene, and so I wanted to kind of have that out there and see it with my French gray, neutral gray, and light umber, and then this is sort of a local color version. What I also learned about myself, day 5, is that if I don't pay massive attention, I'll automatically like zoom in and out with like where I frame the picture and the proportions. So I have to be really spot on with that and careful. Like, she doesn't even look like the same person to me, like here and here. Maybe these two, and maybe these two, but yeah, it just something to keep in mind. Here I had just finished watching Witcher 3, and so I did a portrait of Yennefer, and this was just a picture from online. I know her eyes are violet and they're not here, but the concept art that I was looking at, this is how it was. So I learned that skin tone is still a thing. This is the only marker I had at the time for skin tone, and as soon as I laid down black over the brown, there was a super clash. So how I had to fix it was dropping in some bright peach in spots on the face. I'm sorry about the shadow in my setup, but yeah, this helped to brighten her face and make it look more like it matched her hair. Then this, I was working through some YouTube videos just to see what other people had to say about drawing fundamentals. I was just curious, and then I made it like a study day, and I just sort of like sketched along while I was watching, because why not? And there was some interesting things on reducing the face to simple, very simple shapes, because then you have sort of something in your mind for how to apply light and shadow as like a shorthand, and then you can get more complicated, but overall it's going to push your realism a lot further. And that was Alfonso Dunn I was watching, and then he had another one, like the 5 reasons you're not making progress with your art, and it was just sort of an informative video, and I thought he had a lot of really great points for everyone, and so I just wrote things down as I was listening. And I have a couple of friends who do art, and I've seen some of these hang-ups for them, and I've seen some of them for myself. Like, comparing your work to other people's like way too much, and not just spending time working on things yourself. Giving up before the plateau is passed. Not being honest enough with yourself to assess what you're doing well and what you need to work on. And that's something I try and do with every drawing that I do. I try to just go through, and this is just more notes on one of the videos I was watching, and then I did a couple of random sketches just on my own. But yeah, it's really important to self-critique so that you can know what's going well and what's not going well. So as I do these journals every single day, I'll find things that I think I'm not really strong with X, Y, or Z, and I want to spend some time like working out some of the issues. Okay, this also was Alfonso Dunn about urban sketching and simplifying a scene, but I had the urge before I actually got very far into his video to just give it a try and see how I did on my own, because I hadn't honestly tried it before. So I did a 15-minute sketch, and it took 25 minutes for the colors, and I think it came out pretty well. And I finished watching the video afterwards, and what's really funny is the things he omitted and kept and the things he rendered were different from me, and I watched his way of drawing things versus the way I drew things, and it was just very, very interesting to me. This is just more notes on, I think, one of Alfonso Dunn's videos. I was just like kind of liking his style and some of the stuff he was talking about, so I gave a few of his videos a shot. This one is a scene that I paused. It was from The Boys. It was just an overhead of a bridge, and I thought, that is really cool. I should sit and draw that. Like, I thought it was cool enough where it gave me pause in the moment. So I'm like, that means I should probably attempt to draw it. These little dots here, I utilized a new tool that I saw in, I think, Tio Ichie's video. He's one of the urban sketchers I really like. He had these acrylic paint pens, and when I went into the store, there was 2 different types. There was this one called Molotow, and then the Posca. Posca is transparent. It's not fully opaque. I was able to luckily try these in a local Blick store, and the Molotov, however you want to say that. These guys, these are acrylic paint markers. Do not shake them with the cap off like I did. I messed up my sketchbook actually. You see the red splotches? That was me being super smart and shaking this thing, and yeah, so learn from your mistakes, right? I also decorated a sweater I was wearing at the time, unfortunately. But yeah, I got white, red, and yellow. They seem to be the best for urban sketching. The fine tip, because the bigger tips are really chonky, and unless you're doing really big and need big fine details, the smaller ones are probably for the best. Okay. Also here, I was in another art store and I was able to try their gel pens, so I have some different tests here. And what I can tell you is the best one for going over marker and watercolor is the Signo Uniball. I like the jelly rolls, but my entire experience since high school is the dang things clog up and it's really frustrating. When they work, they're beautiful. I like them, but so often they don't work, and so this one, the Signo, is the solution, at least for me. So that, you know, I save you some time maybe. I did the testing. I'll do a separate video with just about these things, but I just want to show, like, sometimes that's what I'm discovering in my daily journal. So this right here was a test. I wondered how it would look if I did a comparison between one of the watercolor sets I had, which was just an El Cheapo Koi watercolor set, versus the Prismacolor markers. And what I found is I approach coloring in a very similar way. So I just thought that was interesting. And yes, the colors are more muddy here. It's partly the colors I chose, but I like them about evenly, but a lot of people said that they like the marker version better. It's cleaner and brighter. So personal preference, but it's kind of interesting to know that about myself, that I approach it the same way. Okay, so this, I was at an artist meetup for illustrators in my area, and we met in a coffee shop, and I made myself do some people sketching, which I'm not used to just going in with just pen. I am of the school where you sketch first and then you ink, but when you draw just in ink, there's a really loose style, and it's also kind of scary, because you know if you mess up, there's no undo. So it really, I don't know, it makes you ride the razor's edge, and it's just like all or nothing. Just, you have to work fast, and there's no mistakes. And if you make a mistake, there's only a limited number of things you can do to try and fix it. And sometimes you can fix it, and then you feel, I don't know, maybe accomplished that you creatively, like, unjacked up your picture. So this is day 10. And then I did some other sketches after people left. I had more time, and I really like how this came out. This just looks like really tasty to me. And I was also really digging in and testing my marker colors for the first time in this one. And then here I made myself sit down and do a scene, and usually when I look at complicated scenes, my brain just starts to hurt, and my head starts to hurt. It gets overwhelming. So what I've found as I've gone through this is I'm developing a process of looking at a scene and knowing what to look for first to kind of simplify it, so that I don't get overloaded every time. I have a way to, like, toe in and start breaking down a scene, instead of just being like, there's so much stuff and my eye's doing this, and it's like there's so many things. Now I'm like, okay, what's my main vertical? Like, how tall is this in my frame? How long is this line in my frame? Is it completely horizontal? Is it tilted? you know, this is another main line. Is it tilted? You know, just breaking it down like that. And then once you get those anchor points, you can kind of add in other details. Okay, this one was a picture my friend took that she had done some makeup, and I liked the picture, so I've been working with watercolor for the most part, and so working with a marker, it just felt like so dark and it was kind of frustrating, and I hadn't put one of my chisel tip markers in here yet to flesh out my set. So yeah, I was just really limited with my colors. And so this patchy coloring is because it was the only trick I had at my disposal to keep it light. I did not have a good color for the lips, so I did that technique of putting the colors next to each other and hoping it would kind of work out. And then blue in the shadows is something that I really like to do, but it went way too far here. And as soon as I laid down the first bit of line, I was like, crap! It was a mess up, but you know, you have to go with it because otherwise you'll have a big blue line and it just will be uneven. So unfortunately, I feel like I wrecked it with that. But if I went in to try and fix it, I fear I would wreck it worse, so I just made myself like go away from it. This was a 30-minute drawing, 30-minute colors. And up till now, I've not tried to really draw portraits of specific people. I was mostly drawing like fan art and comics and illustration and had more of a graphic style like that. So this is sort of new to me, but it's something that I've wanted to do. The city's not so much, but I'm just pressing myself to, you know, work on these things that I'm not so familiar with, and it's going to be really good for training my eye. Both things utilize your eye and being able to look for angles. So drawing this will actually assist in this, and vice versa. So everything kind of connected. I wanted to punch up the color and the looseness, and I think I mostly was successful in this. However, you get a little closer up. The thing that I think is less successful about this one is this area right here is sort of indistinct and a little muddled. But overall, I do like the piece. It's just this part. I had started drawing some cars in there, which I just ignored when I colored it because the horizon line would have had to be up here, and when I put the buildings in, it didn't match. So instead of wrecking what I had going with the buildings, I just covered up the cars. So lesson learned, I went in and did too much before establishing the main bits, and so that's just a mistake. Although something you could say that's interesting is your mind is going to pick up on the fact that there are car shapes there, and it's sort of, your brain's going to pick up on the fact that it's a city with cars, even though there's no fully rendered cars in there. This one was the Zig pen and Prismacolor markers. It was 25-minute drawing, 35-minute color. Oh my god, this nightmare. This is such a cool pen. The Zig cartoonist pen. I think it's the same Zig brand as this liner. But this liner is, you know, that kind of job. And this is a brush pen with bristles. This is a very different animal. And this animal did not understand how to work, or rather, I didn't understand how to work with this animal. We needed some training between us. So I drew some of the ugliest people I've ever drawn, and the lines were not doing what I was expecting. It's almost like when you draw on a tablet for the first time, and it's not one of the ones where you can see the picture, and you make a line, and you have to get used to the, I guess, offset of what you're doing and then what the result really is. And Oh, what happened here was everybody got hit by the ugly stick. It was just, you're used to pens doing a very certain thing, and so you draw with that in mind, and then the results were being very different. So you just have to understand what it's going to do and adjust for that. So this poor girl, she was very pretty before me and this pen happened to her. These are just people, photos online. This one, I like how it came out, but it doesn't so much resemble the person that I was drawing, which I didn't like that, but just the image on its own, I liked. I forget this one. This is just terrible, awful. And then this one here, I need like a paper bag. This one here, I liked a lot of the line work and stuff, so I see the potential in this pen if you just look at these two. So that I have identified as an area that I need to explore further and learn the tips and tricks on how I need to utilize this pen to make it do what I need it to do and see what style comes out of it. So yeah, this was sort of a interesting slash oh good God failure and, you know, decent. Okay, so this is a totally different pen, and there are definitely some mess-ups on this page, which I will talk about. But first, I want to talk about this amazing pen, which I've already showed. Oh, it's hiding. It's being shy. Come back. Come back. Fudenosuke-san. There we go. Okay, so this is the Fudenosuke pen. I think it's the soft. It's WSBS. Yeah, it's the soft tip. Okay, so this thing is marker proof and waterproof, so love it. This came out in a somewhat realistic style, that's kind of more my typical. And then I was just playing with different ways to render people, and especially really fast. I'm not used to sketching this fast and with absolutely no underdrawing, so that's where my challenge is. Then these two, she came out kind of cute, but she doesn't resemble the person I was drawing so much, and she doesn't look super Asian. And this girl was super cute, and I just ugly sticked her. But there wasn't much I could do at that point. But what I like is I started using some of the colors that I got and just doing like a light toning of the drawing. So I do like that, and I just did touches of color like under her eyes and her nose and her lips and her shirt. Her shirt says kawaii, but you know, it's kind of a lie, but you know, if you have confidence, then anything's possible. I just really feel bad that, I don't know, I feel like parts of it are okay, but moving on. I went back to cityscapes, and this one took me 40 minutes to sketch, and it felt kind of tedious because it's not the kind of thing I really like to do. Took me 50 minutes to color. It's Zig pen and Prismacolor markers. So hour and a half total, but I like how it came out. I feel like you can kind of like feel like you're into the picture, or at least when I look at it, I can kind of put myself there into the scene, so to speak. And then I was really excited to get new colors like this mint cream. I actually did this the day I got those, day 14. So these two were day 14, and that's why I was able to use them. Like this blush pink light, that's a really helpful color. So day 14, not a lot going on that day, but at day 15, this, I tried a different technique for how I approach these drawings. I laid down color, like this was just sort of a blotchy cloud of purple, and then I just threw in some stuff for the buildings. I did an initial 4-minute sketch with the pen, then I put color in, then I drew on top of it, then I did a little more color and the white gel pen. I was really excited about how that came out and just the feeling of it. I messed up the sky. I went in too far. Like, I left white space originally, like you do in watercolor. You leave a lot of white space for, I guess, letting the eye rest and not having colors like just too much. Then I was like, oh, maybe I should go closer to the wisteria. So I did. I'm like, I've ruined it. I actually took the white gel pen and went back over it, and then it was like just lines sitting there, so I started mashing it, and what happened is I got this really interesting like textured cloudy technique that I actually now use on purpose. So I thought that was cool. So it's like a new technique which actually is taking me less time. This took me an hour and 15 minutes total. And I got my cars lined up properly, which I did not do in that other picture I showed you. So that was a success. I got my first little person in there. This was a sketch. This was another meetup. I was just trying to sketch in, where were we? Starbucks. And this industrial stuff. It's just so tedious, but I'm trying to just get in the habit. That was day 17. This is day 16. I did this graveyard picture, and my photo reference was actually during the day, and I had an idea of the tone and color I wanted to use, and so I was trying to convert it in my head, and I like how it came out, except I went back in and added too much texture in the grass, and so that made me lose the simplicity to balance out the complexity. So I feel like I just took it a little too far there, but I like the general colors that I used and how the sky came out. However, my original idea was most of this to be in shadow with just edges showing up, like largely black. So even though I do like this picture, it's not exactly like what I envisioned, and I realized that that photo noir kind of look like in this one, I wasn't really sure how to do, and it's not something I actually sat down and ever did. So this one took a while. This was an hour and 22 minutes, but it felt long because there's so much detail, but I did work pretty fast, so I felt good about that. It was a 10-minute marker under drawing with 10% French gray. Then I did local color, and then I went in with drawing and color and shading and white pen. So that was a completely different technique this time, is to draw with the very light gray. And I've been doing that since. It worked really well for me. This one, I really enjoy how this came out. This was a scene that I sort of took a photo reference. I was just driving and I saw this and I really liked it, and then I firstly was going to do the sky with, you know, the high contrast, like to see how it would look like this was supposed to be, but then I really liked the super stark contrast, so I left it. There is a little bit of color, there's a little bit of yellow marker on the road lines, and this is the white gel pen, but it's like blotted up because it was, you know, obviously so bright on something this dark. This took about 40 minutes, I think. I drew it first, then I went in with the colors. And my photo reference was kind of like not exactly this. I actually had two different scenes because while you're driving, you can't really sit and take a picture of exactly what you want. So the two times I was stopped, I kind of combined those two pictures. Okay, this one, it's the first time I let myself draw from out of my head, and I really liked how it came out, and I liked the colors. The colors are what I intended, with just this very pale and light, and I wanted to use this mint cream color that I'd gotten, and I figured green tea would be enough to be shadows, even though it's a very light color, and I don't know what it is with me and like the peach colors, this peach, I guess this little like electric pink, but I see it over and over again when I'm doing watercolor. I go for this Pyrrole Orange, which has a lot of that same punch as this peach color. You can see in my swatches. This crazy peach color, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's a thing. So I guess that's common where, you know, people might get certain colors they tend to use a lot, and that is one of mine apparently. It feels like it doubles as like a bad color and a happy color. I don't know. I use it in the graveyard as well. It's just a color that has a lot of like intensity and emotion tacked to it, I guess. So yeah, all of this was just super fun to draw. I just drew it from out of my head. I started trying to draw the house out of my head, this sort of Victorian building. And then I realized I haven't drawn enough buildings to craft a believable building out of my head. So I actually went back and looked at a reference after I did my initial marker drawing with the French gray where I like laid everything out. And then I went back in. Something that's good about that is if you draw with the light media first, like the marker, mostly that marker is gonna hide once you put the color in, but it would let me readjust my proportions when I realized something was like really messed up. I could then notice the mess up and then correct it with my ink lines. So this is light peach and blush pink and that white gel pen blotting that I sort of mentioned. I had to lighten up some areas, and they have a blender marker, but it's kind of iffy, but I did use it and it did work a little bit. So that one was 1 hour and 7 minutes, so that one was a bit faster. And then this one, I just gotten my Schmincke watercolor set in. I was very excited about it, and I had to draw something before I went to sleep, and I was really tired. I'm like, well, I could just draw this and immortalize the fact that I got this day. So I did a watercolor tube as well, and I really like how the colors came out. Have a cream in the background, and this is a black set, which is a little tricky to render. It had a lot of shine and layers, and yeah, it felt like it took a really long time. It was 1 hour and 11 minutes, which again is not bad for the fact that I felt like I was fighting the detail for so long. But I even got the little Schmincke owl in there. I like that little dude, he's cool. And this brings us to the last one, day 20. I just found a picture online. I wasn't trying to do any particular person. I just searched for people, and I found this one, Greta Thunberg. I think she's like a young like environmental activist or something. I honestly can't remember. I just saw the picture and felt that somewhat urged like it would be interesting to draw, or it would be a challenge to draw. You know, regardless, I just pick something that gives me some sort of reaction and then I work with that. I used watercolors on her. This paper is not the best for watercolors. It was actually quite frustrating because the water was beaded on the top, and then it just like sat there and sat there and sat there. I'm like, hurry up! So here's a close-up if it will focus. There's a lot I like about how that piece came out, and then there's things that I don't. Here's a mess up I did. I made her face too skinny, and I'm like, well, and I just put a line in to round it out, and same with the chin. And then by the time you're done in a quick sketch, the eye kind of glosses over it. It just looks like her hair is like right in front of her ear. So instead of letting mess ups stop you, you can just adjust the line and move on. This took, I think, 20 minutes, which is not bad. Then I was watching Tia Yuchie's video on thumbnail sketching, and I was like, you know, that's something I don't do. So I was watching it and I decided that something that I don't do means it's something I need to do. So I thought about what kind of challenge I could give myself, and I was like, okay, 2 to 5 minute sketch. I can only work with 3 values, which is the white of the paper, then the gray, and a very dark gray to stand in for black. So he was using a brush pen, like with the actual bristles, and I'm just gonna use what I have on hand, which is the markers. So there's some bleed through from the other page, but you got the idea. And these were very fast, and they're actually very satisfying to look back on. Some of these, like, this one broke my brain. There's just so much going on in a cityscape skyline kind of deal that all of these other ones felt way easier. That one, just, my head freaking hurt after that. This one I feel taught me a lot, and I really like how that came out. This one, the perspective and lines, that just, it's a good thing to be able to like look at the line and trust that your impulse to make the line on the paper will come out accurately, and then, you know, not think about buildings but just look at angles and only look at angles. And so I just kept doing that and moving around, and then I look and it's a good rendering. So it helps you to learn to trust your eyeball and build the connection between your eye and your hand. That's huge. That's definitely something that they talked about a lot in one of my drawing classes in art school, and that was one of the best classes I had for instruction on just drawing from life, is training up that communication between your eye and your hand so that you don't even need to look at the paper. Your hand will move and your eye will move, and they'll be in sync, and it takes a while to build that sometimes. So I'm reconnecting with that whole thing with doing this whole journal, really. I used French Gray 50 and 90, my trusty Fudenosuke pen, and then I labeled what each of these references supposedly were in the minutes. So this one took a total of 5 minutes and 39 seconds. This one took 8 minutes and 43 seconds. It's the longest one because it was breaking my head the most. Like, you really have to pick what tones are next to other tones so you don't lose shapes. You want to make sure all the buildings pop. This one was 7 minutes and 37 seconds, and this one was 7 minutes and 23 seconds. And this one, actually, if that was bigger and done in watercolor, I would rather like that as an urban sketch, and it did not take long. So I see this, and I see the future of where it can go, of just not being so anal about the drawing, just like getting it in there and popping the color in, and not worrying so much about how perfect it is, just capturing the scene, which is the whole point of this journal and making myself draw very often. So in closing, I just want to show, this was one of the color swatches I did from the local store to see what other colors would be most helpful to me to add to my set. Because if you find that you're always needing, like, oh, I don't have the right green, or all my colors are too dark, I need a lighter color and I just don't have it, and if you're always trying to overcompensate for things that you don't have, sometimes it really is time to just get more of your tool, like get more colors or whatever. Then this I do with every new paper I get or notebook. I throw down any of the inks that I have, and then I test them with water and marker or whatever I'm going to be using, because this way, it's tedious, but if you do it once, you understand what your materials are capable of. Like, the zig wasn't really great for water, so I know to never use that for watercolor. The last thing you want is to try something and then you ruin your piece. Tombow I hated because it's never good in water, so as a liner it's rubbish, but if you were doing kind of like a watercolor effect with them, this would let you do blending, so it all depends on how you're using it. But yeah, so if I do all of this, maybe I come out with, you know, 2 solid pens I know will always be good for me, and just ignore the others, and then it can change depending on the paper. So I would just always check with your materials and make sure you know exactly what you're dealing with. Here's another page where I kind of summed up what I found, and I also had some new pens, so I put them in here. And I looked at how the Fudenosuke was like so awesome with water. It doesn't even smudge a bit. But yeah, this was my little summary. Then here I tested different eggshell markers, and there is some variance you'll find with the old and new Prismacolor markers. This is my swatch page. This is all of the chisel tip markers that I own of Prismacolor. That plus these. And so if I find myself needing a slightly different color, I will dip into the chisel tips, even though I don't like using them as much. The brush tip is way nicer to use and blends easier. And you can do like a lot lighter usage of it as well. I also got to see that my warm gray it's dead. You can't even really see it. So I think the color is just gone. So I should probably throw that out. And even this cool gray, it's just like white now. One last thing is I do hear that markers, especially alcohol-based markers, are not particularly light fast. So if you do any artwork that you're going to have displayed, I would recommend you do not put it where the sunlight can be hitting it, but that's generally recommended for artwork in general, unless you do prints, and then prints will be good. You know, you don't have to worry. Sorry, my phone is like spazzing out. Yeah, if you don't hang things right where sun is going to be coming in through a window, you'll probably be fine, or if you do prints, you'll be fine. You can just sell those off and, you know, keep these little vampires in a notebook. So stay tuned for part 2 in 20+ days. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.